I never thought being a decent person would make me a target. I just like things clean. I didn't leave dishes in the sink. I took out the trash before it started to stink. And I wasn't the kind of guy who would throw a rager on a Tuesday night. But apparently, that was enough for my roommate, Jake, to talk about me behind my back like I was some kind of loser. At first, I didn't notice. I kept my head down, went to work, came home, and did my thing. But then, little things started happening. I'd walk into a room, and people would stop talking. Friends from college started acting weird when I invited them over. Then came the offhand comments at parties. Jokes about how I must have a bedtime, about how I probably alphabetized my sock drawer. The first few times, I laughed it off. But then it got repetitive, and too many people were saying the same things. It wasn't just one joke, it was a pattern. And the way people said it, it wasn't just playful teasing. It was like they already decided who I was before I even opened my mouth. I finally pieced it together when my friend Ryan slipped up at a party. "Dude, you should let loose sometime," he said, smirking. "I mean, I get it. Jake says you're kind of uptight, but I think you're chill." I blinked. "What?" Ryan froze, like he just realized he wasn't supposed to say that out loud. Nothing, man. Just, we all gotta have fun sometimes." But it wasn't nothing. And now I had confirmation. Jake had been running his mouth about me. I kept my cool at the party. But when I got home, I was pissed. Jake and I had been roommates for a year. And yeah, we weren't best friends, but I never treated him badly. I even covered his rent once, when he came up short. And this was how he repaid me, by making me the butt of every joke. That night, I went over everything in my head. I could confront him, sure, but what would that do? He'd just deny it or laugh it off. I could just ignore it. But that would mean letting him get away with trashing me while I did nothing. No, if he wanted to mess with my reputation, I'd mess with his. But I'd be smarter about it. I spent the next couple of weeks listening, watching. I didn't change how I acted, and I didn't let on that I knew what he was saying about me. But I paid attention to the way people reacted to Jake at parties, the little complaints people made when they thought no one was listening. "He always drinks too much," one girl muttered after he spilled beer on her jacket. "Dude starts drama for no reason." Some guy grumbled when Jake got in his face over something dumb. It was all there, waiting to be used. And I was about to turn it against him. I started subtly at first. Just little comments in conversations. Someone would mention how crazy a party was, and I'd casually say, "Yeah," especially when Jake started all that drama. Again. Or if someone brought up drinking, I'd chuckle and say, "Man, Jake's the king of blacking out. You never know what's going to happen when he's around." I never said anything outright false. I didn't have to. I just nudged people to connect the dots on their own. And it worked. Within a month, Jake's reputation started shifting. People started rolling their eyes when he got loud. Some stopped inviting him places. And the best part? He had no idea why. But I wasn't done yet. One night, a big party was happening at a house a few blocks from our apartment. Jake was already drunk before we even left. As soon as we got there, I made sure to plant myself in the right conversations. "I just hope tonight's not a repeat of last time," I said to a group of people, shaking my head. "What happened last time?" one of them asked. I just sighed, like I didn't want to gossip. "Let's just say Jake had a little too much fun." Again. Then I walked away, letting their imaginations do the work. By the end of the night, Jake had done what he always did, gotten wasted and yelled at someone over something stupid. This time, people weren't amused. They were annoyed. And the best part? Now, he had no one to blame but himself. Jake had no idea what was happening. At first, he thought people were just being weird. He'd come home from a party and complain about how everyone's acting different or how people are just being fake. I'd sit there, nodding along, playing dumb. "Maybe you're overthinking it," I'd say. Or maybe people are just tired of the same old party drama. I saw the way his face twitched at that, like a small part of him wondered if that was true. But he wasn't ready to believe it. Not yet. That's the thing about rumors. You don't need to push too hard. You just need to plant the idea and let it grow. At every party, I made sure to leave a little something behind. If someone mentioned something crazy happening, I'd shake my head and say, "Man, Jake always gets into it with someone." If people talked about someone getting way too drunk, I'd chuckle and go, "You sure that wasn't Jake?" Always light, always casual, like I wasn't starting anything, just confirming what people already thought. And it spread like wildfire. One night, I was hanging out in the kitchen at a party when I overheard two guys talking. "Dude, Jake's been such a mess lately." "I know, right? He starts drama every time." I stood there, sipping my drink, feeling the satisfaction sink in. Jake had officially lost control of his own reputation. The turning point came when he actually did start some drama. Some guy accidentally spilled a drink on him, and instead of laughing it off, Jake snapped, "Dude, what the hell? You serious?" The guy looked confused. "It was an accident, man." Jake scoffed. "Oh, sure. Just like last time, right?" People around them got quiet. It wasn't a big deal. Just an argument over nothing. Normally, people would have ignored it. But now people were expecting this from him. Someone muttered, "Jesus, here we go again." And that was all it took. Jake heard it. I saw the way his shoulders tensed, the way his jaw clenched. He knew. After that, things went downhill for him fast. The next party, he wasn't even that drunk, but people still gave him side eyes. When someone knocked over a lamp, people joked that Jake probably had something to do with it, even though he was across the room. It was like people were just waiting for him to mess up, to prove the rumors true. And when you're already being judged like that, it's only a matter of time before you do mess up. A week later, we were in our apartment, and I could feel Jake stewing. He hadn't been out as much. He was moodier, snappier. Something was eating at him. Finally, one night, he turned to me and asked, "Dude, do you think people have been acting weird toward me?" I shrugged. "Weird how?" "I dunno," he said, rubbing his face. "Like, people don't invite me to stuff as much. And when I am there, it's like they expect me to do something crazy. I don't even drink that much, man. I don't know why people think I'm always the problem." I gave him a look, tilting my head slightly. "I mean, I let the word hang there for a second. I don't think people hate you or anything. But maybe you've just been a little extra lately. Maybe that's why." He narrowed his eyes at me. "Extra?" I shrugged. "Not saying you are, just saying, maybe that's how people are seeing it." He exhaled sharply, looking away. That was the moment I knew I had him. He was questioning himself now. And once you start questioning yourself, it's game over. The next party was a disaster for Jake. By then, people were fully convinced he was that guy. The drunk, messy, drama magnet. All it took was one bad moment, one little argument, and the whispers started. "Dude, Jake said it again. He just has to start something, huh?" And the thing was, he noticed. He looked around like he could feel people watching him differently. He tried to brush it off, but I saw the way his jaw tightened, the way his fingers curled around his drink like he wanted to break the glass. The moment it hit him fully was when a girl he used to flirt with walked past and didn't even acknowledge him. That's when I saw it. Panic. Not full-blown, not obvious, but it was there. The realization that he was losing control, that people were treating him differently, and that he couldn't figure out why. And I just stood there, watching it unfold. By the time we left, Jake was pissed. "Dude, I don't get it," he muttered. "Why do people think I'm the problem? I'm not the problem." I didn't say anything. Just let him sit with it, because I knew something he didn't. It wasn't about whether or not he was actually a problem. It was about the fact that people believed he was. And that was enough to ruin him. By this point, I didn't even need to do anything. The rumor had taken on a life of its own. Every time Jake walked into a room, you could feel the energy shift. People tensed up slightly, their voices lowered, like they were waiting for him to start something. And the best part, he felt it too. He didn't talk about it much, but I could see it eating at him. The way his eyes darted around at parties, the way he hesitated before stepping into a room full of people, like he was checking to see if anyone was happy to see him, or if they were just tolerating him. One night, we were at a party, and Jake tried to overcompensate. I guess he thought if he was extra friendly, extra fun, he could fix whatever damage had been done. So he started playing beer pong, cracking jokes, throwing his arm around people like nothing had changed. But people weren't buying it. "Oh my God," I heard one girl whisper. "He's trying so hard." "Dude, look at him," another guy muttered. "It's kind of sad, right?" I acted like I didn't hear it. But I did. And more importantly, Jake did too. I saw his smile falter, just a little. Saw the flicker of frustration in his eyes. He was trying, but it wasn't working. The damage was already done. And then he made a mistake. Some guy, Matt, I think, was telling a story, and Jake, probably desperate to get some attention back, interrupted with some over-the-top joke. It was the kind of thing that would have killed a few months ago, back when people still liked him. But now, people barely reacted. A couple of polite chuckles, but mostly just awkward silence. Matt gave him a look and said, "Dude, chill." And that broke something in Jake. His expression twisted for half a second, and I thought he was going to snap. But then he forced a laugh, took a sip of his drink, and acted like it didn't bother him. But I knew it did. I watched as he slowly withdrew from the group. He stopped trying to be the center of attention, stopped making jokes. Eventually, he just stood off to the side, sipping his drink, barely talking to anyone. And I just sat back and watched. At home, Jake wasn't the same. He didn't blast music anymore. He didn't come back from parties laughing, throwing himself onto the couch, and telling me some crazy story about the night. No, now he came back quiet. One night, I was on the couch watching TV when he walked in. He stood there for a second, like he was debating saying something. Then he finally sat down next to me. "Dude," he started, rubbing his face. "What the hell is going on?" I kept my expression neutral. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean," he said, shaking his head. "People are treating me different. I don't get invited to half the stuff I used to. When I do go out, it's like people are just waiting for me to screw up. I don't even do anything, man. And they still act like I'm the problem." I shrugged. "I mean, you have had a few crazy nights lately." He shot me a look. "No more than usual." I sighed, acting like I was thinking hard about it. "Yeah, but maybe it's not about what you're actually doing. Maybe it's about what people think you're doing." His jaw tightened. "And why do they think that?" I met his eyes, raising an eyebrow. "I dunno, man. Why do you think?" I saw something flicker in his expression, suspicion maybe. Like for a second, he considered that I might have something to do with this. But then he looked away, exhaling sharply. "This is bullshit." And just like that, the moment passed. The next weekend, Jake hit his breaking point. We went to a party, and he tried to lay low. He wasn't being loud, wasn't drinking that much. But it didn't matter. People already had their minds made up about him. At one point, someone knocked over a drink, and immediately someone else joked, "Jake probably did it." He wasn't even near it. Jake's whole body went stiff. "I wasn't even there, man," he snapped. The guy just laughed. "Relax, dude. It's a joke." But Jake didn't laugh. He just stared at him, and for a second, I thought he might actually throw a punch. Instead, he muttered, "Whatever," and stormed out. I stayed behind, chatting, drinking, pretending like I hadn't just watched my plan completely destroy him. When I got home later that night, Jake was sitting on the couch in the dark. I flicked on the light. "Dude, you good?" He didn't look at me, just stared at the floor. "I think I gotta move." I blinked. "What?" He let out a humorless laugh. "This whole thing is messed up, man. I don't even like partying that much anymore. And everyone just—" He exhaled, shaking his head. "I dunno. Maybe I need a change. I should have felt guilty. Maybe part of me did. Just a little. But mostly, I felt satisfied." Jake was unraveling, and honestly, it was fascinating to watch. The guy who used to own every party, who used to be the center of attention, was now barely showing up to anything. And when he did, he was quieter, more on edge. He didn't drink as much, didn't joke around the way he used to, and that just made things worse. See, when people expect you to be a certain way, and then you suddenly change, they don't just accept it. They get suspicious. "Dude, what's up with Jake?" I overheard one guy ask at a party. "He's acting weird lately," another guy said. "Like sulking or something." He probably realized no one wants him around anymore. I just took a sip of my drink and acted like I didn't hear it. Jake, though, he definitely heard it. He wasn't even drunk that night, but he still managed to pick a fight with someone. Not physically, just some dumb argument about a football game that got way too heated. The old Jake could have laughed it off, but this Jake needed to win. You always gotta be right, huh? The guy he was arguing with sneered. Jake clenched his jaw. I'm just saying you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And that was all it took. The guy rolled his eyes and walked away. And just like that, Jake was left standing there, looking like an idiot. Dude, someone muttered behind me. He really can't help himself, huh? I didn't even have to say anything. Jake was doing all the work for me. That night, when we got back to the apartment, Jake slammed the door behind him. I looked up from my phone. Are you good? He threw his jacket onto the floor and ran a hand through his hair. No, dude. I'm not good. I kept my voice neutral. What happened? You tell me. He snapped. I raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? Jake exhaled sharply, pacing the room. I don't know, man. I feel like everyone's against me. Like, no matter what I do, people just assume the worst. I could breathe wrong and people would think I'm trying to start a fight. I didn't say anything. Just let him keep going. And it's not even like I changed. I've always been the same guy. I drink, I party, I mess around. It's never been a big deal before. But now, suddenly, I'm the problem. Now, suddenly, I'm the crazy one. He turned to me then, eyes narrowing. Has anyone said anything to you? I tilted my head. Like what? I don't know, dude. Like, has anyone been talking about me? Saying shit. I paused, pretending to think. I mean, not directly. But like, I have noticed people being a little weird. His face darkened. Why? I hesitated, acting like I didn't want to say it. I dunno, man. Maybe people just... I don't know. Maybe they feel like you're too much sometimes. Jake scoffed. Too much? I shrugged. I mean, you do drink a lot. Jake's whole body tensed. Are you serious? Dude, I don't even drink half as much as some of these other guys. And they're fine. Yeah. But I sighed. People don't see them that way. They see you that way. Jake looked like he wanted to punch a hole in the wall. And honestly, that was the moment I knew I had won. A few days later, I got home from work and found Jake sitting on the couch, staring at his phone like it had personally insulted him. I tossed my keys on the table. What's up? He didn't look at me. Nobody's answering my texts. I frowned. What? I hit up like 10 people. Just like, seeing what's going on this weekend. Nothing. No one's responding. I sat down across from him. That's weird. Yeah, Jake muttered. Weird. For the first time, I saw something in his face that almost made me feel bad. Not anger. Not frustration. Defeat. Like he had finally realized that no matter what he did, no matter how much he tried to fix it, he was already too far gone. He wasn't fun anymore. He wasn't cool anymore. He was that guy. And once you become that guy, you never go back. The next weekend, he didn't even bother going out. I went to a party without him, and when people asked where he was, I just shrugged. Dunno, I said. Maybe he's laying low for a bit. And just like that, people stopped asking. Then, one night, I came home to find Jake sitting at the kitchen table with a beer in front of him. He wasn't drinking it, though, just staring at it. When I walked in, he looked up at me. I'm moving out. I raised an eyebrow. What? He exhaled, shaking his head. I need to get the hell out of here. Away from all this. I sat down across from him. You sure? He let out a bitter laugh. What's left for me here, dude? No one talks to me. No one invites me anywhere. And even when they do, it's like I'm not even part of the group anymore. I stayed quiet. He ran a hand through his hair. I don't even know why this happened. Like, what the hell did I do? I shrugged. Maybe people just moved on. He scoffed. Yeah, maybe. He didn't say anything after that. Just stared at the beer on the table, like it had all the answers. And I just sat there watching, knowing that he'd never figure it out. Because he wasn't supposed to. Jake didn't waste any time. The day after our conversation, he started packing. At first, it was just small things, shoving old clothes into a suitcase, taping up a few boxes. He didn't say much, just moved around the apartment like a ghost. I could tell he was still holding on to some kind of hope, though. Like maybe, at the last second, things would go back to how they used to be. That he'd get a text from someone inviting him out. Or that he'd show up at a party and people would act normal again. But that wasn't going to happen. The damage was already done. And I knew it. A few nights before he was set to leave, he tried one last move. "Yo," he said, dropping onto the couch next to me. I was thinking maybe I should throw a going-away party. One last big night, you know. I didn't react right away. I just looked at him, trying to gauge if he really thought that was a good idea or if he was just desperate. "You think people would come?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. Jake's jaw tensed slightly. "Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't they?" I shrugged. "I dunno, man. Feels like people have been kind of weird lately." Jake exhaled, shaking his head. "Yeah, no shit. That's the whole problem." He leaned forward, rubbing his face. "I just don't get it, man. I didn't do anything different. But now everyone acts like I'm some kind of problem." I stayed quiet, letting him talk. "Like, seriously," he continued, looking at me now. "You've noticed it too, right? People treating me different." I hesitated, pretending to think. "I mean, yeah, I guess. A little." He let out a bitter laugh. "A little?" I sighed. "Look, man, I don't think it's that deep. People just get weird sometimes. Maybe they think you've been a little extra lately. Or maybe they're just looking for someone to blame for all the drama." Jake scoffed. "That's bullshit. I haven't done anything." I shrugged. "Maybe. But it doesn't really matter what's true, right? It matters what people think is true." That shut him up. For a few seconds, he just sat there, staring at the floor. Then he exhaled sharply. "Yeah, maybe you're right." And just like that, his last bit of fight was gone. Over the next few days, I barely saw him. He spent most of his time in his room, only coming out to grab food or pack more boxes. I expected him to try one last time, to reach out to someone, to try to clear his name, something. But he didn't. It was like he had already accepted his fate. The night before he left, we sat in the living room, the apartment half empty. He was nursing a beer, staring at nothing. "I don't even know how this happened," he muttered. "One day, everything was fine. The next, it's like everyone just decided I was a problem." I stayed quiet. He sighed. "You ever feel like, once people make up their minds about you, there's nothing you can do to change it?" I shrugged. "I mean, people see what they want to see. If they think you're a certain way, then yeah, doesn't really matter what you do after that." He let out a humorless chuckle. "Yeah, that's what sucks the most." He took another sip of his beer. Then, almost too quiet to hear, he muttered, "It's almost like someone made sure it happened." I froze for half a second. Then I let out a small laugh. "Damn, man. You think someone's out to get you?" He glanced at me, and for a second, I saw something in his eyes. Suspicion. Like some part of him was finally starting to connect the dots. But then, just as quickly, he looked away, shaking his head. "Nah, just sucks, that's all." I exhaled, relieved. "Yeah, sucks, man." That was the last real conversation we ever had. The next morning, he was gone. No dramatic goodbye. No final attempt to fix things. Just a cab waiting outside, a few boxes in the back, and one last look around the apartment before he walked out the door. And just like that, he was out of my life. But the mess he left behind, that was just getting started. At first, I thought everything would go back to normal. That once Jake was gone, the whole thing would just fade away. But I forgot one thing. People love a villain. Even after Jake was gone, people still talked about him. Dude, remember when Jake almost got into that fight? I still can't believe the way he used to get wasted every weekend. Man, that guy was a walking disaster. I laughed along, pretending like I hadn't been the one who started all of it. But then something weird happened. People started looking at me differently, too. Not in a bad way. If anything, it was almost like respect. Like I had survived something. Like I was the guy who had to put up with Jake's bullshit and came out on the other side. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy that. At first, I thought I was in the clear. Jake was gone, and things had finally settled. No more tension in the apartment. No more awkward silences when we went out. Just me, living my life the way I always had. But then something strange happened. People still talked about Jake. Not in a "hey, I wonder how he's doing" kind of way, but like he was some sort of urban legend. His name would pop up at parties in jokes, half-serious warnings, and exaggerated stories. Man, remember when Jake lost his shit at that party? Dude, Jake would have gotten wasted before the pregame even started. I swear, if he were here tonight, someone would already be fighting. It was weird. The guy had left, but his reputation had somehow gotten worse. Like every dumb thing he'd ever done was getting amplified now that he wasn't around to defend himself. At first, I just laughed along. Why wouldn't I? It was exactly what I wanted. Jake had been erased, replaced with the version of him I had created. The reckless, messy, drama magnet nobody wanted around. But then I noticed something else. When people talked about Jake, they always looked at me afterward. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But then, I started catching little things. "You're so much chiller than him, man," someone said to me at a party, clapping me on the back. "Way easier to be around. Bet you're glad you don't have to deal with his bullshit anymore," another guy added. And that's when it hit me. People weren't just turning Jake into a legend. They were turning me into the survivor. It wasn't intentional on my part. I never said anything about Jake after he left. I didn't have to. People had already made up their minds about him, and now they were just filling in the gaps themselves. And honestly, I liked it. I wasn't the boring, uptight guy anymore. I was the guy who had to endure Jake's chaos. I was the one who had been wronged by association. The funny thing was, it wasn't just at parties. It started bleeding into everyday life. At work, one of my coworkers, Jeff, overheard someone talking about Jake and pulled me aside. "Dude," he said, shaking his head, "that guy sounded like a nightmare." I chuckled. "Yeah, it wasn't always easy." Jeff scoffed. "Bro, I cannot live with people like that. Total energy drain. I'd have kicked him out months ago." That was the moment I realized something big. I hadn't just gotten rid of Jake. I had won. I had taken his place in our group, in our social circles, even in casual conversations. People didn't just tolerate me anymore. They respected me. They liked me. And the best part? They had no idea I was the reason Jake had lost everything in the first place. One night, a few weeks after Jake had left, I was at a party when something unexpected happened. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting a random notification, but instead, I saw a text from a number I hadn't seen in weeks. "Jake, you ever think about how fast things change?" I just stared at it for a second. "No, hey. No, what's up?" Just that. I debated ignoring it. Maybe he was just drunk and feeling nostalgic. Maybe he just wanted to see if I'd respond. But something in me couldn't let it go. I typed back, "What do you mean?" A few minutes passed before my phone buzzed again. "I mean how you can be one person one day, and a completely different person the next. And how once people see you a certain way, that's all you are to them." I felt a weird twinge in my stomach. I knew exactly what he was talking about. But instead of admitting it, I just sent back, "Yeah, I get that." Jake didn't reply after that, and I never texted him again. A few days later, I heard a rumor. Apparently, Jake had tried to start over in a different city, got a new place, tried to find a new crowd. But the problem with running away is that you're still the same person when you get there. Someone said he was already getting into drama with his new roommates. Someone else said he was still drinking too much. I didn't know what was true and what wasn't, but I did know one thing. Jake was never going to escape what I had done to him. Because once people believe something about you, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It becomes true. A month passed, then 2, then 3. Life went on. Jake wasn't part of it anymore. At first, I expected some kind of fallout. Maybe someone would figure it out, realize that I was the one who planted the seeds that ruined him. Maybe Jake would come storming back, trying to expose me, trying to fight back. But none of that happened. He just disappeared. His name still came up sometimes. Someone would bring up an old story about him, laughing at how wild he used to be. The stories got bigger, more ridiculous. The truth blurred into something unrecognizable. At this point, Jake wasn't even a real person anymore. He was a cautionary tale. And I was the one who survived him. Then, one night, everything changed. I was at a party, same as usual, when I saw something that made my stomach drop. Jake, standing in the doorway. He looked different. He had lost weight. His hair was shorter, like he had tried to make some kind of fresh start. But his face was the same. Tired, defeated, and, most importantly, angry. He locked eyes with me from across the room. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I didn't panic. I didn't flinch. I just raised my drink and nodded. He didn't move for a second. Then he walked straight toward me. The room seemed to stretch, like time slowed down as he got closer. People noticed him now. Some whispered. Some turned away, suddenly fascinated by their drinks. By the time he was standing in front of me, the party had gotten noticeably quieter. He didn't say anything right away, just looked at me, eyes searching my face, like he was trying to find the person he used to know underneath it all. Then he spoke. "You did this to me." His voice wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive, but it carried. I could feel people around us listening. I tilted my head. "What are you talking about?" Jake let out a bitter laugh. "Don't do that, man. Don't pretend like you don't know. Like you weren't behind all of it." I stayed calm. Took a sip of my drink. "Behind what?" His jaw clenched. His hands balled into fists at his sides. I thought he might hit me. Right here, in front of everyone. But he didn't. Instead, he leaned in just slightly, lowering his voice. "I know what you did," he said, barely more than a whisper. "I know how you turned everyone against me. How you sat back and watched me self-destruct while you played innocent." I didn't blink. "Sounds like you're looking for someone to blame, man." His nostrils flared. "You don't even feel bad, do you?" I shrugged. Why would I? For a second, just a second, something flickered in his eyes. Something that almost looked like hurt. Then it was gone. He nodded to himself, stepping back. He looked around the room, at the people avoiding his gaze, at the ones whispering about him. Then he looked back at me. "You win," he muttered. Then he turned and walked out. And just like that, Jake was gone again. Nobody talked about it after that. Nobody asked me what happened, what he had said to me. It was like the entire party had collectively agreed to erase him. By the next morning, it was as if he had never even been there. A week later, I got one last text from him. No accusations, no threats, just one sentence. "Do you ever think about what kind of person you are?" I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. Life continued. New people came into the group. Old stories got replaced with new ones. The parties kept happening. And me, I was still there, still respected, still liked, still standing. Jake was just a name people used when they wanted to talk about what happens when you lose control of your own reputation. And that was the last thing he ever was. The guy who lost. And me, I was the one who made sure of it.